So let's talk a little bit about the Green New Deal, because I'm trying to think about what are the policy proposals that Joe Biden cannot run away from because this moment calls for them, because he has to do something.
Right.
He has to do something.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, I want to link what we were just saying to the thing you've now proposed, the question you've now proposed. And this is why I want to do this. Yes, this is a moment you can't run away from it. Absolutely. I mean, he could try to finagle it. I mean, if he doesn't feel any pressure, he could try to, how do you finagle it? Well, you manipulate this, you manipulate that. You can pass. We know you can enact things that basically amount to a hill of beans. Is that the expression? But here's the thing. This question, which came up in the majority report, and you and I have been going on about in conversation, this question of what does the left do, and can the left afford this division where, you know, significant voices on the left are saying they're going to sit it out, essentially, in this. But here's the thing. The Green New Deal matters. I mean, we know it matters. And it's also a vehicle for all of us. I mean, literally, we're both offered a challenge to save our planet almost, but also an opportunity, in essence, to make a difference regarding what a Biden-Harris administration becomes, okay? Because undeniably, the first instinct on the part of the left, and we've already seen it, is opposition to Biden, okay? We know who those folks are. And then there are the rest of us who are saying, well, we know how we're going to vote, but we're going to mobilize to go into some kind of oppositional mode. But we ought not to right away assume oppositional mode, okay? They may want to think that it's oppositional mode. I think what we have to do is we have to literally promote. We have to be aggressively promoting the Green New Deal idea. And I think we need to sort of rally around it because it's the best vehicle, one, for making a difference and saving our asses. But it's also the best thing around which to mobilize the other fundamental questions. So, for example, there will be no resurrection, redemption, and rise of a left agenda, a truly left agenda, if we do not do something about this economic crisis and be seen as important to that resolution. And also, clearly, if we do not revitalize the American labor movement, we can write off the future of the left. Because frankly, the reason that Biden and others can generally ignore the left is because the left is not properly embedded and connected to labor.
So if we were to revive, I mean, we have to revive the labor movement by reviving state legislatures. We need to have not just Democrats controlling state legislatures again, but progressives. And I do think that they're actually more susceptible to labor at a local level than at a national level for local reasons of local dynamics. You know, it's the teachers, for instance, in Arizona, right to work state. Teachers, of course, have been organizing on the ground in Arizona. There's ballot proposals. It is now the norm to be standing with teachers. And that's, you know, the largest, that's the teachers union gives more money to the Democratic Party than any other monies. Sorry,
and we know what canvassing is about. We know that most people who are on the left are not going door to door right now, though it's not out of the question in many areas. But it's also the case. Who do you think is manning excuse me for the male reference, who's staffing, volunteering for the phone banks? I mean, teachers are infamous on the right because they are the folks who go door to door and make the phone calls. And those are teachers, not just teachers. They are teachers who belong to labor unions.
Teachers that belong to labor unions are connected to the communities, connected to parents, connected to the children, which of course rubs up against the issues of the pandemic. And it's an actual access point for us to pressure the Biden administration, because the Obama-Biden administration and Arne Duncan were for basically privatizing schools.
Essentially,
the charter school movement. You know, it's comical now looking back and seeing how openly and aggressively they were taking on unions and the why would you first off, why would you centralize the DNC and decide to take all money away from state legislative fights? Why would you take Democratic governors out of office and put them in Homeland Security when they come from states where their right to work options, at the right to work conversations? Why would you choose to take on the largest union and contributor to the Democratic Party? Why would a Democratic president make those decisions, especially in the face of an economic collapse?
Well,
And can they get away with that this time?
Okay, so, and if I look, I'm a historian, so I like to go back a little ways. Okay, no, I mean, and you know very well the arguments of Tom Frank and my arguments, the degree to which Democrats turned their back, literally turned their backs on the working class. And they did so truly believing the future of the Democratic Party didn't need the working class. I mean, that was their view, that this was going to be the party of the meritocratic order. Okay, this was going to be the party led by the Ivy Leaguers, basically, and it was going to bring in diverse identity political forces. I mean, that was the assumption, okay? And the working class, which was in their minds the white working class of the Rust Belt, and that's the only time you'll ever hear me use that term, okay? So they turned their backs. But they also failed to consider, and this is now in the Clinton years, the degree to which they still needed, he could never have been elected were it not for the labor movement.
Of course.
And for that matter, the environmental movement too. But what did the Clintonites do? The first thing they did is they passed NAFTA. They literally betrayed the very folks who put them in office. And then on and on and on. Listen, we don't need to review the whole Clinton years. Now, the Obama folks were not that much different than the Clinton folks. It was almost as if it was a dynastic battle that took place between them, as opposed to those who actually wanted to embrace labor versus those who could care less about labor. So I think they brought with them a kind of, if you don't call it an ideology, a certain kind of political sensibility, and labor had no place within it. And I think and they could get away with it. Sorry, I'll just say one more thing.
I agree.
And the reason they could get away with it, and people get upset when I say this, is that Richard Trumka and the labor movement did not want to take the position of even of a loyal opposition of demanding attention from the Obama administration. And as a consequence, the Obama administration ignored our Wisconsin Rising when we were stripped of collective bargaining rights as public employees. And soon enough, the Republicans were able to turn us into a truly right-to-work state. So, and why? Because Trumka and the AFL-CIO did not want to be seen as a labor movement going after an African-American-led administration. I'm convinced that was the case. They just did not want to do it. So as a consequence, we don't get the kind of pressure on the Obama administration that it needed. And I say needed because Obama had aspirations to be a great president, but you can't be a great president from the Democratic Party if you are not aligned with labor. They need labor just as much as we on the left do.
Well, what really, whether it's organized labor or just actual labor, working people, what doesn't make sense to me is this isn't rocket science. This is not a theory. This is like basic looking at a population. Yeah. Why would you exchange millions of voters for a group of people who went to Ivy League? I don't understand. It's like the tech sector is a group of donors, yes. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to is they just automatically assume that working people will always vote for Democrats because they have nowhere else to go in their minds, at least pre-2016, and that instead of getting money from labor, they were going to go towards the tech sector, the Ubers, if David Plouffe went to go work and be a lobbyist for Uber after he ran Obama's campaign, was in the White House. So there is a clear strategic move to completely, over the last 35 years, 40 years, pull away from labor. And not only, of course, it created an opening for a populist on the right, but it's made it harder for us now to organize even now that I think that Biden kind of understands he needs labor.
Yeah, he does, I think.
But it's weakened. So labor is weakened now. And so going back, full circle to your point about having the ability to pressure through labor and through the Green New Deal and through jobs programs at the local level all the way to the national level. When you have weakened unions, how do you do that? I mean, how do you build upon unions? How do you reform these unions?
Well, first and foremost, a Biden-Harris administration needs to put right on top of their agenda, inside of that Green New Deal, workers' rights. Okay, if they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and let's face it, politically, they're more likely to pursue a massive jobs program associated with a Green New Deal than they are passing laws that empower working people. The point is not to allow them to do one without the other. In other words, so Green New Deal is going to involve a massive jobs program, and a massive jobs program that must have as a model for the rest of the nation, if they haven't yet enacted it by law, a $15 minimum wage to be involved in any jobs that are associated with the Green New Deal. But they must also include in it the right to organize and bargain collectively. They can build that right into any kind of Green Deal. Look, back in the 1930s, the first initiatives on the part of the Roosevelt administration, which were not nearly as progressive and social democratic as they would be in what was called the Second New Deal of 1935. Even in 1933, in the National Industrial Recovery Act, which actually gave certain kinds of powers to big business to try to recover from the Great Depression, they built into it it's not a law in itself, but it stipulated that workers had the right to organize and bargain collectively. That was the first, that was like a mini Wagner Act that would become a serious Wagner Act in 1936. So similarly, that has to happen this time. And that means, by the way, that the left has got to get its agenda straight, which is why unity is so essential.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.